Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to be here and lovely to see an audience from all different parts of the world, as far as I can see. I'm here in my capacity as chair of the Basel Audit Subgroup, which means I have a perspective on how, particularly on how auditors and banking supervisors should engage with each other. But the title of this particular presentation is Limiting the Risk of Failure in Financial Institutions. And as I stand here today, where I'm aware that some of the biggest banks in the world have just been fined $3 billion, £2 billion sterling, for what I would call fixing foreign exchange rates. And as I read a survey yesterday of the UK, thinking about the cuts in government expenditure that need to be made after the next political election in our country in May next year, they did a survey and they asked people, where do you think the cuts should come from? And the vast majority, in terms of a menu of options, thought the cuts should come from taxing bankers' bonuses. So the point I'm making is that there is still not even a residue, there's a tide of lack of trust in bankers and banking. The title of this session is Limiting the Risk of Failure in Financial Institutions. What I'm going to do is do a roll call, go through a lot of the changes that the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision has sought to put in place to both limit the risk of failure, but can I be clear, also, if there is a failure, that there isn't the call on taxpayers' money that there has been, because that's one of the issues that's caused the lack of trust. And then I want to complement that by talking about what external auditors and banking supervisors together can do better. They do have a role to play, but can I be clear, and also thinking of Henry sitting to my left here, banks will still fail. And the auditors can only do so much. They will not necessarily stop a bank failing, but they can act as a flag. So those are the two areas I'm going to talk about today. So, oops, if I can get the slides to work. I don't know if you can see that at the back, but you'll notice this is the first of two slides which cover all the changes that Basel have brought in the last 5 years. So, to limit the risk of failure in financial institutions, Basel initially focused on three key areas: increasing the amount of capital banks hold so they didn't fail quickly, strengthening their liquidity requirements so they didn't run out of cash, and also with that making sure that they weren't too indebted, owing too much money, too much leverage. So, what do we have? We have requirements that increase both the level of capital you have to hold and the quality. None of this, debt dressed up as equities and that didn't behave like ordinary shares. You have to have at least 2.5% common equity, proper ordinary shares, the sort of shares most of us would recognize, much less in the way of any hybrids. And also limiting the deductions you're allowed to make to get to a decent capital figure. We have, on the other side, a stronger risk weighting has been brought in. So if you think of a bank having to hold a certain level of capital, we tend to think of that as a percentage. And the way we calculate that percentage is we say capital on the top line divided by risk-weighted assets on the bottom line. And that denominator, risk-weighted assets, has had a few problems, let's put it like that. And the feeling was that banks were gaming the system a lot before the crisis, and to some extent maybe still are. So there's a stronger risk weighting for trading book aspects, those complex derivatives no one quite understood, counterparty credit risk, and securitizations, taking things off the balance sheet and securitizing them. So that's all about increasing the amount and quality of capital. Then there's the new liquidity regime, full of acronyms, the LCR and the NSFR. Basically, all they're saying is you've got to have enough